All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome back. So today I am going to be demonstrating the painting that you see off to the left. It is a pride take on the Bride of Frankenstein, and also I have made Frankenstein's monster transgender. We're doing a multimedia design here, so we're going to have a lot of unusual materials. So let's hop right into it. So first things first, for this one, you're gonna need a hairdryer. Yes, you will need this bad boy to dry things off before you work on your next layer. So hairdryer, step one. Step two, you will want gel gloss medium. We are going to actually adhere the printed off traceable that you can get on my Patreon directly onto our background when we get to that point. So this is basically, you could use Mod Podge as well if you have that. Yes, so when you're using multiple layers, you have to make sure that the bottom layer is dry before you go on to the next layer. Otherwise, your painting will sort of merge all the colors together and you won't get the effect you're looking for, especially since we're going to be using multimedia themes here in mediums. The next thing is modeling paste. So we're going to create some dimensional scars and we're going to have a little bit of fun with that. And I've got a couple of backup methods in case this doesn't do what I'm hoping it will do. And those backup methods are leather cord string that I will attach with E6000, depending on whether or not it gives me that bumpy raised edge that I'm truly looking for. We are also going to be using salt. That's right. Yeah, you couldn't really do that on... We're not using this to keep bad spirits away. We're using this to literally create physical texture. So we're going to put down our wet background paint and then we're going to throw salt on it. And it's going to create a pebble sand-like texture in the paint. And because this is a pride painting, we will absolutely be using all of the colors. So we'll have quinacridone scarlet. And as a backup, I've also got cadmium red hue. I'm out of my large red at the moment, so we are praying that this is enough. Otherwise, I'm going to have to get inventive with the orange. Not impossible, but a little more complicated. We are also going to be using cadmium orange hue. And for this, like I usually recommend with warm colors, you want to use at least an artist level 2 paint, so that way it's less thin. It just means that there's more actual color in each part. If you could think of paint as like particles of color in suspended texture, there is more color particles in artist level 2 than there is in level 1. And to that effect, for the yellow, we are using cadmium yellow deep hue. We will be using verde green, brilliant blue, and dioxazine purple. We're using a pretty deep purple, so we'll probably lighten this up with some titanium white. And per my usual, I like to use flow acrylic, white and black, so it's a little bit looser and thinner because I'm usually using these as a way to thin out my paint and to spread it a little more evenly. And also because this is Pride, I have busted out all of the student level neons. This is your this is folk art brand, but basically your 50-cent little jars that you can get at any little store. And I'm pulling out all of these. These will glow under a black light, and it will also make the colors super vibrant, even though it's really thin. And just for a little bit of extra shine when I want it, I did grab out my iridescent medium. I don't know if I'll use it, where I'll use it, but I have it out as a just in case measure because I'm excited about it and I love sparkly things. We are also going to be using a giant sponge. We will be sponging in our background. So that's what this is for. You could use a kitchen sponge, you could use a balled up garbage bag, just something that will change the overall brush stroke to be kind of a mottled effect. That's what we're aiming for. So there's lots of different ways to achieve that, even if you don't have like an artist sponge. Obviously, we will want a cup of water. We will want something to put our colors on. This is just a cheap little palette, maybe $1. All right, now for the brushes. So I'm going to be using a very large 1-inch flat, a 5/8 angle brush, a size 4 square, a size 2 round, and a size 0 round. And just because I like to have it handy, I've also brought out my dotting tool. Now I have one other thing. I printed off my traceable. You can get this on Patreon for $1, because what's going to happen is once we put in our background, I'm going to use that gel medium to fixate it on top of my background. Like, this is going to be like this interesting effect over top. And what it does is it allows you can use this method on anything with any painting. You'll put the medium on the back and then stick it down and then gloss over the top of it too. And then when it dries, you've got perfect lines to paint over without having to use traceable paper or freehanding it or using a projector. There are a number of methods, but this is a nice, easy beginner way to do this. And it also is great for like creating texture and also to help you eliminate some of the background noise when you're wanting to paint over top of something. It kind of moderates your background. So we have that as well. Without further ado, let's jump on into it. So I'm going to start off with my reds. I'm going to put all my colors, all of my regular rainbow colors on my palette. Get a little spot for each one. And I'm probably going to use a lot of it because this is a 16 by 20 canvas. This is a large canvas. I want to replace some of the art in my studio with something a little more me, because right now I've just got completed puzzles and whatnot that I've glued together and they're hanging up on the wall. Love my Disney villains. We talked about that yesterday, but you know, I'm ready for a little more Universal in my life since I'm a pass holder at Universal right now. So I've got a nice little healthy dose of all of my colors, and I'm gonna go ahead and smush. Oh, this one might actually be too big for this. I'm gonna start dabbing it on there in sort of like random styles. And we're gonna have to do this a couple of times. In fact, yeah, I think I'm gonna reach for a smaller sponge. Actually, I'm gonna cut this one. Yes, you can cut your sponges. There's nothing sacred about a sponge. I'm committing death to a sponge to make it more manageable. All right, that is a little easier. And I'm just kind of smattering it on there right now. We're not doing anything like specific. And now for the orange. And I kind of want to blend this kind of together a little bit. I want them to overlap. I want to ultimately fill in the whole space. And I don't want to forget to do my sides, because I'm not going to frame this. It's going to go directly on the canvas or on the wall. And I do recommend having like a sturdy easel for this, because it will bounce back on you. I've full on wound up wearing a painting before. And you can see it starting to kind of blend together in some areas. Right, and now I'm going to take some of my yellow and start smattering it. This would be a really great way to do like an autumn leaf effect if you're, live in an area that actually experiences autumn and the changing of the leaves, or just wish you did. And you want to do this super quick because we need the paint wet to throw the salt on. If we're doing a super large piece, I'd recommend mixing in some slow dry medium, so that way it would keep it wet for longer. All right, and now I'm going to start working in some of my green. And I'm going to kind of let it dance up a little higher into where I've kind of made that kind of yellowy space. So I don't want to have like a severe line of where the colors kind of stop. And this is definitely a thing where I'm going to say don't overthink it. Because remember, we're going to cover part of this and there's going to be multiple layers. Okay, now I'm going to bring in my blue. And again, just kind of letting it smear up a little bit. I apologize if this is super loud where the wood on my canvas is smacking my frame, but it is necessary to use force. I imagine you can probably guess what's going to happen next. I'm going to need to flip my canvas. Okay, and I'm going to pick up my purple. And I'm being very careful to get my entire side down here because I don't want any white showing. Now you're probably wondering, why am I bothering to sponge this area that is totally purple? But the reason I'm doing that is because when you zoom in on it and you look really close, you'll see the texture of the paint, even though it's all a solid color there. Whoop, 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 whoop. Tried to run away from me. Yeah, that's about right. If you don't wind up wearing paint, are you really even a painter? Okay, and I'm going to go and rinse my sponge real quick so the paint doesn't dry on here. I'll be right back. All right, so I've rinsed off my sponge and rinsed off most of my arm. Biscuits. I knew I was going to miss a spot. In any case, so I've rinsed off my sponge because I know I'm going to come back and use this again. We're not quite done. But while this is wet, I'm going to throw some salt on there. All right, so I'm going to actually put some of this on just in my hands. And I'm going to sprinkle it on. And what this does is it will look a lot like, you know, when you buy those candied sugar candies that have like sugar coating on them, and or if you go to like a drink plate or get like a mixed drink and it has sugar crystals on the rim, it has that kind of appearance to it. But it won't stick unless the paint is wet. All right, so we've got that. And also the reason for using specifically salt as opposed to anything else is because it's not going to attract bugs. Okay, so we've got our first layer in. Now I'm going to go back in and serve myself up some more paint. And we're going to do another layer, but with some white mixed in. So I'm going to take my hairdryer and I'm going to temporarily mute the mic so you don't have to hear this. Okay, so a good way to know whether or not your paint is dry is when you look at it on the angle if it is shiny. Like I got a couple of wet spots up here, but that's okay because I'm going to do that part last. So I'm going to flip my canvas back and dry this bottom little section over here. All right, now that my canvas is dry enough for me to touch, I'm going to go ahead and start adding another layer of paint. All right, so what I want to do is mix my colors I already had with a little bit of white, and I might bring back a little more of that red. It needs to be a little bit richer. But I'm going to go back and I'm going to grab a smaller sponge. so that way I can target a specific area a little more effectively. Right, so I'm darkening up this corner. And I'm going to serve myself up a little more of my quinacridone scarlet because I have run out of what's on my palette. And the goal is to not cover up all of your previous layer, but to accent it. And I want to hit the top too. All right, and I'm going to do a little more of my orange. And now I'm going to mix in a little bit of white with that. Like, I'm not mixing very much. I just put a little bit of yellow right, or white just right there in the middle of my orange spot. And I'm not mixing it necessarily on the brush, it's just kind of on there at the same time. So I just want to lighten up the area just a little bit. And it's okay for that white to show through. We at least in this particular case, because this is an artistic choice. We are choosing to lighten it up just a little. And I'm going to do the same with my yellow. I'm going to extend my yellow down some because it kind of got lost a little bit. And I really want it to be a little more noticeable. And again, I didn't mix it, it's just on there at the same time. And if you're ever unhappy with a layer, just wait for it to dry and paint over top of it. I never recommend trying to course correct while the paint is actually still wet. That will not usually give you the result you're wanting. All right, and now I'm going to rinse my sponge real quick. And I'm going to put some more of my green down because this kind of got bled out with my blue. My blue was very dominant. And that's okay. I really like blue, but we want to share the rainbow. So we're going to go ahead and add it back in a little bit and extend it down. And I want to drag some of it down into this purple, mostly because I love that color combination together. Oh, so pretty. And a little up here in this corner. And I am much happier with how that is coming together. And I'm going to mix a little bit of white into my blue here. just because we want to create a little bit of visual interest that's a little bit different. And I'm going to do the same with the purple. And the reason we're leaving portions of this white is because we're going to go over it with those neon colors that are very thin. So they need something lighter to attach themselves to. Otherwise, you won't see them at all. They'll be almost invisible. All right, so we've got kind of our basic part of our background in. And while it's still a little wet, well, the sponge is still a little wet, I'm going to go ahead and rinse it again so it doesn't turn hard. You do have to rinse your artist sponges directly after use or they become stiff. And then existentially, they're trash. But they do recover really well. They turn back real squishy. All right, I'm going to throw some more salt on there. For the areas that are still a little wet, this will add a little more texture. Okay. All right, so we've got our basic in. Now we're going to throw in our neons. So you see I don't have any pink in here, so we're going to use our pink. And for this, because I'm going to do it probably with my brush, I'm going to scumble it in. I'm just going to use my cap lid rather than put it in on my palette. All right, so we got a nice bright pink. And I am going to use my 5/8 brush. And I'm going to dip it in there. And I'm just going to kind of stab my artwork a little bit with it in a couple of places to just kind of bring the pink into the perspective. This won't be noticeable because we've already got so much texture going on that it'll just add overall to the texture. And I'm going to put some of this pink down here too. Because pink is sort of the color that bridges the gap in the rainbow. And I'm just like smashing my brush like in either direction on there. Over, 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 over. I'm not stroking. I'm literally just setting it down. I'm smacking my canvas. I'm snapping it like the same way you'd be tapping your finger on someone's shoulder to get their attention as an obnoxious child. Mommy, 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 I want your attention. All right, so we've got kind of our pink now more represented in there. And now I'm going to go back in with my neon yellow. I'm going to rinse my brush. And again, I'm going to use the lid for this just because I'm not going to use enough of it and I don't want to risk wasting any. And I'm going to put this paint down heavy so that way it really like leaves a visible impression. Like physically there will be bumps if I were to touch this with my hands. That is what we are aiming for. And I kind of want to extend it a little bit out in either direction. I don't want it to be like a harsh, crisp line. So I'm going to smatter the yellow up a little higher as well. And this will look super cool under black light. I have to reconfigure the hue so that way you could see it, but maybe I'll take a picture of it after I have the hue reconfigured so you can see how dope this looks under black light. All right, so I've got my yellow in there. I'm going to rinse my brush. And now I'm going to go for my orange. And the reason I'm shaking it is because I wanted more of the paint to come into the cap. And even though this paint is really, really thin, it does a marvelous job of helping the other paint stand out and really does a magnificent job of like creating another level of vibrancy. So I've got a smattering of orange. Now we just have our blue to go. I don't have a neon purple, which makes me sad, but I just haven't seen one. Or haven't seen one lately, not locally. Okay, so now we're going to do our blue. A couple of years ago, I did a commission for literally a 3-foot by 4-foot painting. It was all glow in the dark paint of a banana taking a selfie. Like, this was a thing that somebody paid me $300 to make. I am still shocked that they wanted this. Thank you, Telly. We are building our backgrounds. And while my paint is still wet, I'm going to throw another layer of salt in there, because I really want this to have a really grit texture. All right. And so we're bringing back out the salts. The salts goes for round 3. And I am just kind of dribbling it on top. If you had the option to do this outside, outside is great. But if not, just vacuum really well. This is pretty much the only functional use for salt in my house. It doesn't get used on anything else because of my heart condition. But I love the texture it creates on art. All right, so I'm going to take some of the stuff that fell off the desk and kind of smatter it back on there. Repurpose. Okay, we've got our first kind of layer in there. So the next thing we're going to do is I'm going to grab this brush and some iridescent, And we're going to do some swirls. All right, so for swirls, you're going to put your paintbrush in your paint. Again, making sure the paint never goes all the way down to the metal. And you're going to stick it on your canvas and then turn it in a circle. We're going to create our own little like concept of fairy lights here. So I want quite a few of these. It won't matter to put them too close in the center because like I told you at the beginning, we're going to be putting our traceable in the center using mixed medium. But I really wanted to put some shine in there. I wasn't sure how I was going to do it, but I really wanted some in there. These are like little bokeh bubbles, you could say. And I might have a couple just off the side of the canvas. We're just creating a little bit of magic. Just a little bit of magic. Because we all need that in our lives. Okay, so we've got our little swirls on there. I'm going to rinse my brush. And now I'm going to use my detail brush to draw some cute, colorful swirls in there. So I'm going to go ahead and grab my red. Actually, before I do that, I better dry my background. It is very wet and I'm about to stick my arm on there. So I'm going to mute this real quick so I can use the hairdryer without hurting your ears. All right, we aren't perfectly dry, but we are probably dry enough at this point that I can turn the canvas upside down and work where I need to work without getting my hands in my paint. All right, and for this, what I'm gonna do is just cute little swirls. They probably won't be aggressively noticeable at first, but it'll be one of those things where you take it in as a whole and you start to notice it at the end. And you want to vary the size and the number and placement and locations of them. We're just creating a very whimsical background. All right, now I'm going to swoop over to my orange. And I do have my orange mixed with white still. And that'll help here because it'll help it show up a bit more against the rest of the background. But not super noticeable. It's just meant to be like a hint. It's just meant to be like, hey, I'm here. I'm having an adventure. Tell me about your adventure. it's having a moment. It's having a moment. That's what's happening. It's living in its own little happy moment in time. Right, and then we're going to do the same with the yellow. And I need to put more yellow on my palette because I don't have a whole lot of that right now. And I don't know how noticeable these will be, but that's okay. I'm not a super fan of yellow to start with, I suppose. I like it as like, I would definitely say it's probably my personality color. I'd say my personality color is probably yellow. And I've definitely got more yellow dresses than I ever used to have. I made a gorgeous Dole Whip dress last year for summer, and it has a huge gathered skirt and a gorgeous drop waist. I was kind of unsure about wearing it because I've never thought of yellow as being very complementary to my skin. Like, I always kind of thought it made me look like Big Bird or something. But I was reassured that I looked beautiful, so I'm a lot more confident wearing yellow than I ever used to be. Okay, so we've got our yellow in there. Right, now I'm going to flip it because now I'm at the point where I would be in my paint. And now for the green. And we don't have to focus again too hard on the center because we know we're going to be doing things there. We are just kind of creating some visual interest because this is all the background. This is not the main event. This is just a supporting story. I had my first successful sewing stream this morning. I was very excited about that. So I'm definitely going to be bringing you more of that kind of content because it makes me very happy and it makes me happy to share my happiness with everybody else. Spread the joy. Spread the joy. Okay, and now for our purple. All right, I am pretty happy with how this is right now. So I'm gonna go ahead and walk you through the steps of how to use gel medium to affix paperwork onto your art. And I'm thinking that I want this kind of like here, right? Like kind of following that line. I think that's what I'm gonna do. So I'm going to take my gel gloss medium and my one brush, and I'm going to put a healthy layer across the whole back. It'll have about the same consistency of school glue or Mod Podge, and you could in theory use either of those for this as well. Okay, and I'm going to stick my brush in my water, and I'm going to go ahead and affix it down precisely where I want it. I probably could have used a thicker layer. It's not staying as well as I would like. All right, and now that it's on there, I'm going to put a thin layer over top. And you'll see it kind of blur my lines a little bit, and that's okay. I'm going to paint over top of it, but this is going to help kind of seal it in place. And you want to make sure you overlap the paper and the canvas. You want to pay particular attention to kind of use it towards your paper to kind of fill in the underside. That'll help kind of keep it nice and cemented in place. And you can use this as a medium choice in any of my paintings that I do. You can use this as a way to avoid doing, a way to use the traceable. All right, so we've got it affixed on there. I'm going to dry it now. Make sure you rinse your brush after using school glue or Mod Podge or the gloss medium, whatever medium you're using. Make sure you rinse your brush well afterwards so your bristles do not stick. All right, now I'm going to use the dryer and I'm going to dry my piece. So I'm going to put it on mute for just a moment. All right, so we've got it kind of on there now. So I want to go ahead and start kind of filling in my colors. So I've only ever seen the Bride of Frankenstein in black and white. So I'm going to be kind of ad-libbing what colors I think she should be. And if you haven't already, you can check in my Discord. I've got a link to where you can watch the original from 1935 on Vimeo. It's in the movies and TV category. And I think for like the parts that are not included in the background, I'll see at the end what color that should be. I'm not sure yet. But we'll go ahead and start playing with the more obvious colors first. I like starting with hair. I love hair. All right, and I'm going to use black, white, and I'm probably going to mix in a little bit of blue and purple because a lot of truly black hair will shine kind of a bluish or purple color to it. And that way I can differentiate the hair between the bride and the monster. That is to say, Frankenstein's monster. He's not actually a monster in my opinion. I think he's just super cool. So I'm going to go ahead and start kind of from one side and working my way over. And you can see I can use the lines I drew as sort of a guideline for what I'm doing here. Makes it a super easy way for beginners to paint. So I definitely love this approach. And because I put so much layer and texture into my backgrounds, this provides me a little more of an even surface for me to paint over top of. And it also helps it stick out to the front a little more. Right, and I'm gonna mix a little bit of blue into the black. Not a lot, just enough to kind of tell the story of, hey, my hair has highlights. And I'm gonna probably mix in a little bit of white, just so, because hair isn't like a solid color, right? It has highlights, it has lowlights. I mean, all natural hair does. Even if you dye your hair over time, those things reappear. Your hair will not be like Ronald McDonald, where it's all a solid color. Like that just doesn't exist. It doesn't happen. So I'm going to kind of work a little bit of that in there. And I don't want to cover the whole thing. I just wanted to do a little bit of a light bit. And let me actually bring this up a little closer. Okay. And I'm gonna kind of leave like the line closest to one side the darkest, and then add it to be a little bit lighter as it reaches the other end. So that way it's sort of like differentiated that this is the texture. Her hair has got texture to it. I'm gonna work some of that blue in, because the Bride of Frankenstein is mad stylish. And then just a little bit of smidge of white in a couple of like small areas, just so that way again it looks like she got some highlights in her hair. And then we've got one more like big area right here that's black before I go into her white wispies, because she's got like that rogue stripe there. Remember, like she's got this cute like finger wave that I just cannot duplicate with my hair no matter how hard I try. I just cannot do it. It doesn't work for me and it makes me so sad. And we're going to work a little bit of blue in there, because she is stylish diva. She's got tint in her hair. And just a little bit of white in a couple of places to highlight the curve in her hair, because we want to make sure that people realize that she's got body. Like her hair is dope. All right, and now I'm going to rinse my brush. I'm playing with the idea of adding like the words like love is universal, because that's the tagline for the parks at this time of year. And I'm kind of in love with that as like a slogan. And you may be wondering, why am I putting white over white? It's because I want it to be super brilliant. And the the um the I lost the word. I lost how to speak. The medium that I used to glue that down sort of made my paper translucent. Just a little bit. And I want that to be like super brilliant, because that's like her shocking beauty. No pun intended, but shocking beauty. Dramatically beautiful. Like we are here for it. And I had a little bit of a wispy here that's technically part of the next hair, the hair beside it, where it continues on. So I'm going to go ahead and backfill that spot because I realized I forgot it. I I know. Shame on me. Shame on me. I forgot something. It happens. All right, so we've got it in there. And I'm going to outline this, just kind of the edge of that in a very thin line of black that will turn into a nice soft gray, because she's got a couple of these little cute little highlights of this white. But I want it to be super noticeable that they're individual hairs, right? So we want it to be kind of gradient. You want to tell the story of it having multiple strands doing this gloriously beautiful thing. Oop, and my stuff's kind of coming up a little bit, so I'm going to put another quick little layer of my Mod Podge there, because it is not behaving properly down here because I didn't put quite enough. So I'm going to protect my piece a little bit. There we go. And I'm continuing to work on the bride's highlights. And then we're going to work on the next little piece of the highlight. Again, with like the lightest color appearing to the far left and it getting darker as it approaches the right. And I'm going to introduce a little bit of black at the edge. And then it's going to move into the darker color again. And this is definitely not the first layer of paint that's going on this. We are the only layer. This is just the first. So don't panic if anything isn't perfect, or if you want to change the way you're doing something. You still have a lot of room to make adjustments if you don't like how something is turning out. There's always time to course correct and make changes. All right, so we've got our black in, and I'm going to add a little bit of my blue in there. Just because, like I said, she's stylish. She's not going to have like flat hair. It's going to be colorful, just a little bit. As colorful as black and white picture would have allowed her anyway. I imagine she's dope and has, you know, a little bit of blue hair. That she's got that shiny, healthy hair. And then just a little bit of white in a couple of areas to kind of help tell the story of like the shine in her hair. She's got that super healthy hair. We're talking Pantene commercial. All right, and now we're gonna move on to the next piece. What color skin do we think that she has? The Bride of Frankenstein. Should she be like a soft gray skin? Right, we're just going to fill in this kind of space, and you kind of want your brush strokes to go along with the shape of the hair. She's got super textured hair. We may wind up even putting some string in here to kind of tell the story of that. I'm undecided, but I think we'll wind up doing that. And I'm going to put some blue in there. And I'm going to go back in with a little bit of white. Just because we're kind of just telling the story of all of this shine and this texture. Okay, and now we're going to move on to the next part of her hair. I am intentionally working on this sort of from a top-down approach, so that way my hand is less in wet paint. Like that is part of the thought process for starting up here with her hair, instead of like something more focal like her face. It is a choice to keep my hands as clean as possible, because I usually wind up completely covered in paint. Like I've already had to rinse my hands when I did the sponge. All right, now I'm going to work in a little bit of blue. And a little bit of white to kind of just tell the story of that little strand of hair. And now back to our black. The more I think about it, the more I think I'm gonna go with like a very dove gray skin. She's a reanimated corpse. Right, and some of our blue. And a little bit of white. And now a little bit of black. And I definitely want to put several little white strokes over here, because there's different little hair pieces happening. That's sort of like the side of her hair from the angle. All right, so we've got kind of the base for her hair in. I'm gonna rinse my brush. And you can already start to see, like, look at all the scumble and the texture just from this initial base layer. We are telling a story. All right, now I'm going to mix a little bit of a dove gray together for her skin, because that's going to be its own little bit of a story. And I'm not going to mix this on the canvas because I want to be able to control the shade of gray a little better so that it appears more uniform until I add the highlights and lowlights I personally want to add. Right, so we're going to go with something like this. And I'm not really worried about covering up my lines here because they were just meant to help guide me. I think I need to lighten this up a little more. It's mixing in with her hair a little too much. It's competing in a way that I don't like. There we go. All right. I'll go ahead and start filling in the rest of her face. And I want to clean up my scalp line here where I put in her hair, where I kind of over missed the mark a little bit. And you can probably see that you can still see a little of my sketch design underneath. And that is by design. It's not like as visible, but it is there to help me as a guideline. And this is why it is so useful for beginner painters. Now I don't want to mess with her lips. I haven't decided what color lips I'm going to give her. If I'm going to do like something that's more normal and do like a darker gray, because normally your lips would be a slightly darker color than the rest, than your, than your normal skin palette. Or if I want to give her something super shocking, like brilliant red, like I could see like that being a super fun choice. And I'm not going to do her neck at the same time because I do need to make sure that when I do her neck, that I make sure that it's slightly darker than her face. So I do think I'm going to work back in a little more white. I'm going to grab my 5/8 brush, so that way it is nice and smooth. And just kind of wash the color over. Helps eliminate some of the extra brush strokes and kind of airbrushes the face a little bit. And we want to make sure the center of her face is slightly lighter than the rest, because it would be closest to our light source. And so we can see that we've got this slightly lighter center. And I'm going to go ahead and do the underside of her chin now. And I do want to make sure that this area remains a little darker, so that way it's obvious that this is not some sort of continuation of her face. Like it needs to be really clear that this is a separate part of the body. And down here, I'm going to make it a little lighter because it won't be as shadowed there at the collarbone-ish area. And I'm going to just kind of keep working in a little more light, just sort of down here. I'm going to grab my square brush so that way I can do a little more work under the chin and kind of drag the color down. I think I might put a little bit of black in there to help darken that spot. There we go. All right, so we've got kind of that going on. And I think I am going to go for it and have her have like super bright, brilliant lips. I think I like that as a concept, and we're going to go for it. All right. And I'm going to let that area rest, and I'm going to work on, we'll call her, this should be Frankenstein's monster, but that's a little bit of a mouthful, and I have made her a woman, so this is now Frankie. This is now Frankie. I am dubbing her Frankie. And she's also got black hair, but I'm going to tint hers with purple so it doesn't compete with the bride. Can't miss the bride on her big day. And we're going to do some fun texturing things with Frankie's face. So we're not going to do a whole lot with that at the moment. And I'm going to work in some purple. And it works out well because my dioxine purple is really dark, so it really blends itself nicely to this as a use case. All right. And work in some of that purple. And then we're going to throw a little bit of white in there to help kind of highlight where the ends of these little individual hairs are at, just so that it creates a little bit of texture and dimension. Okay, and moving on to the next little piece. She's got like these super fluffy bangs that I designed for her, and I am so jealous. I cannot do this with my hair. My hair does not have the body to do this. It's just way too thin. but a girl can dream. All right, work in a little bit of purple. Tell a little story with some white. Nothing too crazy. We're just highlighting a little piece. And now the last part of her bangs, and then we'll work on to the back of her hair. And we really kind of want this front part to really stand out separate from the rest of her hair, because this is towards the front. Like this is the part that would be most hit by sunlight. All right, and now for the back. And this very back part, I'm gonna leave flat black because it would be the furthest away. It would be the furthest away from the light, so thus it should be the darkest. And I think I'm gonna go almost straight purple for this next piece. Like, Frankie's kind of alt. She's cute. I wonder. Nope, she's not single. She's not single. She's dating this girl right here. Right, and I'm going to work in a little bit of white, but not like a lot. Just a little. Just so we can kind of see that her hair has some story going on. It's having a moment. All right. And I'm going to work a little purple into my black here. And just a little bit of white just to kind of tell a little bit of a story about the texture, and move on to the next piece. All right, and we're going to work in some purple and a little bit of white. And now for this, we've got just a little more hair to go, and then we're done with this base layer of hair. God, her hair is so luxurious. I want it. I want her hair. And this should be a little lighter because it's towards the front. All right, so we've got kind of like this base idea of her hair in, and we've got her hair in. I'm gonna do a little bit of modeling paste in this area here because this is gonna be like a scar. If I could get the jar open. Hold please, I have to go find someone stronger than me. Give me just a moment. So modeling paste is a no-go because I cannot get the jar open, which makes me sad because I have literally never used this jar before. It is like a new jar. So this makes me especially sad. But we will find another way. We will find another way to do what we want. So as an improvisation, what we are going to do is put a thin layer of the gloss gel medium in place. And we're going to kind of cake it on there. It's going to be kind of thick. Because this is like a raised scar, right? This is a burn. It is a burn, but the bride loves her anyway. Right, and I've left it up there very thick. Like you can see it raised if you were looking at it from an angle. And while I'm here, since now I know the modeling paste isn't working, I'm gonna go ahead and do the areas where these raised scars are gonna go. Because I kind of want them to be a little more dimensional than just painted on. I want them to be standing sort of at attention. And I'm going to do that for her little scar lines too, because she's got some, and I want to kind of inform that same kind of concept on that side. Like they were literally made for each other. Like I love that as a concept. And I'm going to do this little bit over here too. Actually, no, I'll wait and do that part at the end. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and seal up my jar. And I'm going to hit it with the hair dryer. I'm opting to not let it dry all of the way, and I'm going to mix in some salt. Because we kind of want this to look like torn skin. And I might work that into the paint a little bit as we go. We'll have to see how it goes. But while I'm letting that area kind of dry a little bit, I'm going to go ahead and start working on the rest of the skin texture. So I'm going to grab my square brush, my 4 square, And I'm gonna kind of talk about the rest of her skin over here, because, you know, over here is a continuation of her body. So I'm gonna put that down. And it kind of goes into her dress, because that's kind of like where her arm meets her dress. And then she's got a little bit of that on this side too. And for her dress, we're going to leave her dress mostly white. But I might put in some like iridescent paint on it. Because she's got on a white dress and she's a bride, she should be a pretty bride. Like, she should love her dress. I want her to love her dress. That's important to me, that she loves her dress. And I'm going to work in some of that iridescent medium. And I'm going to put another layer of white in there to kind of lighten it. And I'm going to rinse my brush, because I need for that to dry before I do any more there. And I'll go ahead and maybe start placing some of the skin. And we know that Frankenstein is sort of green, but I kind of want her to be a little more of like a soft green. Maybe more like something akin to like Sally Skellington, perhaps. So we're gonna ad hoc this a little bit. So I'm gonna go ahead and throw the light green on there first. Oh yeah, this is way too She-Hulk. Not that She-Hulk ain't cool, but we ain't aiming for She-Hulk today. We're going to want to tone down some of this vibrance. But I'll go ahead and put my base layer in. Just so at this point it's all a uniform color. And a little bit more of my green. And I'm going to put a little bit of the gray mixed in with the green, I think, to kind of wash it out a little bit. Just to kind of tone it down. And we're going to lighten it up a little bit. Okay, so we've got like this soft green that's kind of grayed out a little bit. And we kind of want that to dry before we go any further. But I think I'm going to give her sort of like some deeper green lips, because that sort of appeals to my personal aesthetic. So I'm going to use phthalo green for that. And I'm not going to pour it out. I'm just going to put a little from the cap here. And I think I'm going to outline parts of her body in this darker green, for it to be sort of like the shadow color. Like that's the part that's making up her ears, making up this jawline. And we're going to darken from like just under her chin down, because that's where the shadow would be. And we've kind of got to do something with the scar area. It should be kind of dark, and it should kind of honestly look a little bit gross. Bonus if it looks a little infected. Like this is a scar. So I'm kind of letting the paint like thicken up in that spot. And I am going to use my square wash to kind of blend this area a little better. There we go. We're creating shadows. Shadows are important when you're painting. Light will not hit everything the same way everywhere. There's gonna be differentiation. Right, and now I'm gonna outline this concept of her nose. I don't like doing a whole lot with noses, mostly because I stink at them. I really need the practice, but I hate the idea of doing something that I know I'm going to stink at. Like it's hard to force your body to do that. And oops, lost my cap. All right, now we're going to go ahead and kind of start bracing in the outline here of our eyebrows. This bit for her eyeshadow, like the crease of her eye is. Actually, I think I kind of like this better for this. Maybe I'll paint some of this out a little bit. Yeah, I'm going to paint some of that out. I don't like it. I don't like it. It's not working for me. If something is not working for you, never feel like you have to keep it. It's way too much. It's way too exaggerated. So I'm going to buff it out. That wasn't working for me. It wasn't serving me. So we're going to remove it and try again. I think that more understated look works better. And I think I'll do that with the ear too. Just kind of lighten it back up. It wasn't serving me. There we go. Much happier. All right, and now I'm gonna rinse my brush. And dip into the black and start kind of putting in her eyes. Like one of them won't be super noticeable because it's sort of in the crevice, but the rest of it is very, very noticeable. And I want to say that she's got gorgeous lashes. Maybe she wears falsies, maybe she was super blessed. But either which way, she's got nice thick lashes. And we're going to do a couple of tiny little strokes at the bottom because her eyes are closed, and she would have lower lashes as well. And I think because of the style of this painting, I may outline all of the pieces in black at the end. It kind of depends on how sharp it looks or doesn't look. We'll play that part by ear. But now I'm going to kind of do her scar up here. And we've got stitching, because she's been assembled, right? She's been assembled. And I'm going to put a little bit of like black detail work here in the scar, the big nasty scar. Because we need to create a little bit of shadow in there. Portions of it need to be darker. And her screw should be gray, so we'll go ahead and fill that in and maybe do some outline work there. And we've got her scars down here. And we're not done with her, but for the moment, we're going to take a break and we're going to come back over here. Actually, no, we should probably do her arm while we've got the color mixed together. So I'm going to throw my green down. And her other arm, you don't really see it because it's kind of offhand, but her other arm is around her from the front. So we do see like a portion of two of her arms. And I'm going to go ahead and do a little bit of a touch up over here too and add some of this green back in. Because I actually think I like it more vibrant. I thought I would like it the other way, but it wasn't doing anything for me. No. And I'm going to add a little bit of my white in here to sort of subdue it a little bit. And then we'll go back in this spot here and put a little bit of white back towards the center of her face, because that's, like I said, where the light is coming from. All right, we'll go back and continue on with our stitches and our little bit of detail work. All right, and we're going to start kind of putting in those stitches along on the bride as well now. Kind of where we made those marks with our gel. And my paint got a little thick, so I'm going to rinse it off. And then she's also got kind of this scar that goes across this side of her face. And I do think I'm going to go ahead and plan to outline their entire, like the outline of all their faces in black. I just think it will add like a nice little detail there. Boop. Right, and I'm going to turn it upside down so I can work on her face without putting my hands inside where I've got wet paint. All right, we are coming along. And I'm gonna kind of work on some of this outlining in the black with the hair too. Just so you can kind of, it's super clear like where hair pieces end and new ones begin. We're just kind of defining that a little more. All right, and now I'm going to work on the details of her face. And I need to turn it back around because I can't draw the angle I need to from that side. My hand doesn't know how to do it. And they both have their eyes closed, like they're really enjoying this moment together. And I'm going to go ahead and choose to outline her lips. And I'm going to do the same over here. And now we're going to do a little bit of work with the screw. And where the dress meets the skin. All right, so now I need to choose what I want like this white area to be. I'm thinking because turquoise is my favorite color and it's not really present anywhere else, that I will probably use turquoise. Oh, or maybe pink. Maybe pink. Pink isn't super prevalent. I could do pink. Let's see. Yeah, let's do pink. And we'll do it with like the radioactive pink. I'll have to do a couple of layers, but it will be totally worth it. Oh yeah, I'm definitely happy with pink as the choice here. Okay, and then we've got this space in between them that's pink. And then this space. Oh my gosh, I am loving this. There's not really a good way for me to do this without getting in the way of everybody else, so I'm sorry. Okay, so I'll let that spot like dry a little bit, and then I'll go over with another layer. And I'll ultimately like outline it, I think, in black as well, so it kind of stands back out against the rainbow. So while that is drying, we will go ahead and start tackling some little extra like texture concepts inside the hair. Turn it upside down so I don't have my hands all up in it. So I'm just going to do a couple of like very narrow black strokes into the areas that I made a little more gray, because we're just kind of telling the story of this hair, this really, really textured hair. And these are just short little strokes that follow the curvy lines that we painted for her hair. And now we're going to do the same thing with white in like this light gray area. Just small little dash strokes of white. And we're going to do a little bit of black in a couple of small areas, just a few small little dashes. Right, nothing overwhelming. We're just kind of adding a little bit of a concept here. And now I'm going to go back with my blue and do a couple of straight little blue dashes in the same kind of way that we've been doing, kind of following the texture that we created earlier. And a little bit of white in those areas wouldn't be remiss either. Just, again, following the shape of those curved lines that we made. All right, so we've got her hair. I think we're pretty done with her hair. Her hair is pretty good. We're going to go and add a little more going on to Frankie's hair. All right, we're going to do the same kind of idea, purple dashes in the same texture and direction that the hair is going. And we're going to do a little bit of white. Just little tiny dashes. Right, and I'm pretty happy with how that looks. So I'm going to turn it upside down, or right side up again. And I'm going to go over the layers that I made for the face, so that way they're nice and dark. Like she had these really pronounced eyebrows. Like she was very stark. And I'm going to go ahead and do another layer of my hot pink in the background. I want that to be super bright. I definitely want to cosplay at some point She-Hulk. Like, love that show. Love her, love that show. All right, so I'm liking that. So now I'm going to outline the whole thing in black. So I'm going to grab my angle brush. And I need to pour out a little bit more black paint. And I'm just going to go along the outside of my edge here. And I want this like a super nice thick line. All right, and I need the canvas to dry a little bit, but I think I want to do like the heart going, like the line, like the arrow going through it. I think that would be, oh no, bolts, bolts, because it's Frankie. Yes, let's do that. Ad-libbing, ad-libbing. So I'm going to dry my canvas. So I'm going to mute it real quick while I use the hair dryer. All right, so my paint dribbled a little bit, so I need to course correct, which is why I dried again. And I'm going to go over the spot where it went a little nuts in white. And then I'm going to cover it back up with the orange, which is the color behind it. And that should help like disguise where the paint went a little crazy on me. And it did a little bit down here too. So we're just going to course correct in a couple of places. And I'm going to darken up my line while I'm waiting on that to dry and to make that correction. And I'm just kind of removing some of my chalk lines with some plain water here. And I think I might outline my arrow a little bit in a couple of places with white so it stands out. Or a gray, whichever. I'm not going to think about it too hard. I just want it to pop. All right, so we've got like this nice little outline. And I think I want to do a little bit of the underside of the heart too. And we'll say the shadow kind of stops about there. But see how that just helps it pop just that much more? And I'm going to cover up where I made that the little whoopsie earlier a little bit with a little bit of orange. There. And now I'm going to hit it with the dryer because I want to do some lettering, I think. All right, and now I'm gonna grab my chalk and my handy dandy ruler, and I'm gonna make some grade school lines for myself so that way it all makes sense. So I want to say that I want to use that as like my bottom line. Actually, no, that's not high enough. Use some water to get rid of my chalk line. I think that needs to sit a little lower. And I'm going to say that my max height is going to be like here. And then a little bit of a middle line there. And I'll do the same down here, kind of a max line. Boop. And then something to help me kind of keep the balance for the center line. All right, so I think maybe block letters. Love is universal. Oh, I should start further over. Doesn't work. Take two, take two. I need to start further over. Nope, still not quite right. And this is why I never do lettering. Okay, let's try this again. Start way over here. Universal. That works. Okay. So I'm going to use black. The lettering will be thicker, but I wanted to make sure it fits while I can still kind of dry it out, buff it out, change it in case I biffed it. I swear I hold my breath while I'm doing lettering. Makes me so nervous. We are almost there, guys. We are almost there. All right, now I'm going to go back with my thicker brush and make the letters nice and thick. And I'm going to do this upside down when I do the top part, so that way I don't put my hands in the bottom lettering. Darken up my letters, get them a little thicker. Right. I'm so excited to be going into the theme parks on Wednesday. Oh, epic. Theme park junkie. That is me. All right, now I'm going to flip it to do the other side. And then I'm going to outline the letters in white, just like I did with the arrow. So it gives it a little more pop. If you enjoyed the stream, take the time to go over to trevorproject.com and hit their donate button. We are in Pride Month and we need to support our friends and family. We need to be practice being good neighbors and caring for them. No matter how different they may be from yourself or anything that you're accustomed to. Like if anything that you're used to seeing, if they're a bit different, we need to learn to start being more accepting and knowledgeable and be an advocate for our neighbors who believe or do things or are just different in general. Whether you are gray or green or whatever, who you love isn't shouldn't be something that should be decided by policy or a limitation on being your best self. We need to support everyone in their idea of their own personhood. They are people. We are all people. All right, and now I'm going to remove some of my chalk lines so I don't get confused. And I'm just doing this with a wet brush. And then down here. I encourage you to follow the HHN at home tag and see all the cool things and that's happening this month for celebrating Halloween Horror Nights at home. Okay, now I'm going to outline in white. And again, I'm going to flip it upside down so I don't wind up sticking my hands in my paint. We are almost at this home stretch, guys. We are almost done. We are almost done with this bad girl. All right, now I'm going to flip it over. We are so close we can taste it, guys. And I'm just kind of ghosting the rest of the letters, even though that's not where the main shadow is, just to make sure that the letters are super visible. I would hate for my message to not be super clear. All right, we're done. We're ready to sign. And I think I'm gonna go ahead and sign in black. All right, well, everybody have a great day. Thank you for hanging out with me.